Okay, so we've got the doubler today. We got the two PowerPoints, well, the two chapters at least, uh, combined into one PowerPoint. But we're going to be looking at chapter 8, which is going to be talking about how to avoid and break plateaus. So obviously, like, we would much rather just not have our client experience a plateau, but if they do get hit with a plateau, we want to know how to sort of overcome and break that, right? So we're going to talk about that today. And then the other part that we'll talk about are some common fad diets. We'll talk about like some weight management myths that are out there. That one goes really quick because it's like, hey, does this happen? No. It is like, does this happen? It's like, no. And we just kind of work our way through it. But after completing this first section, we want to be able to understand appropriate goals within our clients' own like lifestyle and obviously like genetics and things like that. So how to set appropriate goals so that we don't go too aggressive and hit those plateaus we're talking about. Talk about how to assist and reach those goals with our clients, and then how to communicate the science behind like why it's a good thing to go at the rate that we are going to suggest rather than lose 14 pounds in 6 hours. Or whatever crazy stuff you see on the front of a magazine cover. So hitting a whoop, I do it every time. Hitting a plateau. Hitting a plateau, really, really common occurrence that does occur. I mean, honestly, you're gonna hit certain plateaus, whether it is a plateau in how much weight you're lifting or a plateau in how much weight you are losing, a plateau in how fast you're running or things like that. Your body adapts to certain types of stress, right? And so sometimes you'll have clients who will they'll then try to adjust to make up for those plateaus by like even further lowering their calories, and they'll report extremely low calorie intake, which should be adequate for them to reach their goals, but it just doesn't happen. So it's like, what the heck? Like we did the math, right? We calculated how much energy we're expending, and we're looking, and we should be losing X number of pounds, but now they're just finding that that's not really how it's going, right? So we're going to address some of the non-medical issues. Obviously, there are sometimes like medical reasons for these things. It could be like a hormonal disturbance or something like that, but we're going to kind of address all of the non-medical side of this, right? And so first thing we got to look at is like how a freaking plateau occurs. Like what's the physiology behind this, right? Well, again, going back to, the conversation always circles back to this, this first rule of thermodynamics, right? Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only be transformed from one form into another form, right? And so we know that that's true. No matter like how hard you are plateauing at whatever time, right? It doesn't mean that like the law of thermodynamics has changed. There's nothing magic happening in terms of like the body. We're plateauing because of some reason that we as like a fitness professional and client just haven't really figured out yet. It's like something's happening and we just haven't really identified what it is, and so your body is constantly trying to find a balance. Like when your body is losing weight, it doesn't want to do that. It stored that body fat for a reason. It doesn't want to just tap into it for energy and get rid of it. So it's trying to find ways to maintain that body weight. It's trying to find ways to plateau. Because if it can do that, then it doesn't have to tap into that for extra energy. And it means that like, it's doing its job, which is to maintain homeostasis, right? So we got to figure out like, what is it? Like, what's going on here? Is it because, we're under reporting like the amount of energy we're expending? We're over reporting the amount of calories that are coming in? Like what's the deal here, right? So physiologic adaptations in terms of like, physical activity, performing certain exercises is going to burn calories more efficiently than others. Your body, this is kind of a little bit of a bummer in a way, a little bit of a bummer about exercise. When you are new to exercise, everything is really challenging. You don't know how to move. You don't know, your brain doesn't have a lot of like neuromuscular efficiency to be able to move the way it's supposed to. And so like your brain, because your brain doesn't know how to control your body perfectly, you end up doing things in a really inefficient way, which burns a little bit of extra energy, burns a little bit of more calories. And so as you get better and better and better at the movements, you start to find more efficient ways to move, and those are better, because it saves a lot of energy, but saving that energy is kind of counterproductive to a weight loss goal, so that's one of the things that we actually tend to see a little bit, somebody who's going for like a 1 mile run, they get better at that 1 mile run, it's not quite as difficult as it used to be. Therefore, it doesn't burn as very many calories. And then the big one here, and this is the one that is like, honestly, sometimes kind of a hard part of the conversation, is non-compliance to the program, meaning that your client is not doing what they are supposed to be doing. Now, a lot of times, like when we start having this conversation about non-compliance, we kind of jump straight to the idea that like, it's like they are, cheating or not motivated enough, or and it's like that's not necessarily true. That's in fact that's more often than not the case. Your client has a hard time with compliance because sometimes like they're just not personal trainers who know how to analyze calories in the same way that we do. So let's look at this physiologic adaptation one first, right? So physiologic adaptations to exercise that can cause plateaus, right? Your body will initially expend a lot of energy, during exercise, but as you get better and better and better at that exercise, you are going to be much more efficient. So the caloric burn is going to come down. This is one of the reasons why it's really important to track different pieces of physiologic information. Like don't just track body weight, track your, body fat percentage, track your circumference measurements, track all of these things, because we are looking for, changes, right? We want to see like as they are changing. And body composition changes are part of this as well. This is a physiologic adaptation that we'll sometimes experience, right? So physiologic adaptations, right? By tracking like different pieces of data, you can look for certain changes, right? Like as you are looking at like, if we go back to this one, I guess, as you're looking at like someone's weight go down, that could be like, oh, my weight has stalled, right? So like, let's say you had a client, and they were 250 pounds, right? And they lost, let's say 4 pounds this month, right? So now they're down to 246, then they lost another 4 pounds the next month, now they're down to 242, right? But then all of a sudden their weight plateaued. They were supposed to lose another 4 pounds, but instead they only lost like 2 pounds, right? So now they're down to 240, right? And it's like, what the heck happened there? Why didn't we get the results we were expecting, right? And it's like, okay, well, let's look at something else, right? Suddenly we take a look at their body fat percentage, and we see, I'm gonna pull two, whoops, the wrong thing. God, I hate opening OneDrive. Okay, there we go. Close it. I know. I'm sorry, OneDrive. I never want you open. I click it all the time. So our client's 240 pounds, right? So we tracked their weight, and their weight plateaued a little bit, right? They had a consistent loss, and all of a sudden it got a little bit stuck, right? But we saw their body fat percentage go down, consistently, right? So when they were 250, when they were 250 pounds, they were maybe 30% body fat, right? So 250 times 0.3, that was 75 pounds of fat. Then they were 246 times 0.29, that was 71 pounds of fat. So that's in line with what we're talking about there, right? That's about a 4 pound loss. And then they were 242 times point, we'll say 28%, right? And then it was 67. So that's about another 4 pounds lost. But then now they're 240, right? And they're, we'll say instead of, what I got, went from 30 to 29, 20. Now they're down to 27% body fat, right? That is a 4.5 pound loss of body weight, even though they only lost, 4.5 pounds of body fat lost, even though it is only a 2 pound loss of body weight. So simply by taking like another measurement and looking at their body fat percentage, rather than just looking at their overall weight, it could explain our plateau. And it's like, you're right. Okay, we did plateau in body weight, but here's the reason why, right? We've got an underlying reason behind it. It's like you replaced 2 pounds of that fat loss with 2 pounds of lean body mass gain, right? Or let's say something similar happens. They're losing weight. You're tracking body fat percentage, but then you notice that they lose some substantial lean mass, right? Maybe they lost a lot of lean mass over the week. Maybe they lost 4 pounds and the body fat percentage only shifted a little bit. It's like now suddenly the weight loss was good, but the body fat percentage was bad, and that's the plateau. Well, now we look at another measurement. We take a look at our circumference measurements, and we see that our inches are still going down substantially. We know that when you lose substantial inches, it's rarely from muscle mass, because muscle mass is not very large and body fat is, right? So it's like, yes, we lost some lean mass, but we got to remember that when we say lean mass, it sounds like we're only talking about muscle, but we are talking about your muscle, your bones, and all of the water inside of your body, of which you are like 60%, like you are mostly water. So we've got a lot of like water to lose. So this week we lost a substantial amount of body water, and that made your lean body mass tank a little bit. But if we look at the inches, we see that the inches are still going down. Does that make sense, Kenny? All right, we look at different pieces of data, and that can sometimes explain our plateaus.
Everything loud and clear.
Love it. It's a great answer. So next one we've got body composition changes, right? So here's another reason why we can plateau. Let's take a look. I've shown you this before, but if we we'll go to a BMR calculator, and we're going to use actually, I'm going to make this person a little heavier, 200 pounds. So let's go to this person right here. They're 25 years old, right? They're 5'10", 200 pounds. Their current BMR is 1,898. And let's say they're exercising 4 to 5 days per week, right? So that's going to be, they need to consume 2,781 calories in order to stay the same, right? But we're putting them on a weight loss routine, right? So we want to lose weight. So let's say we do a 300 calorie reduction, right? So now we're going to do a 300 calorie reduction, 2,781 minus 300. That's going to come out. So what we're going to say is we're going to calculate out and have them eat 2,481 calories per day. If they do that every single day, that's going to be 300 times 7 days a week. That's a 2,100 calorie reduction. That means they're going to lose about 0.6 pounds per week, right? Which is pretty good. That's a pretty decent rate. It's not super aggressive. It's not super fast, but at least it's very maintainable, right? So let's fast forward 3 months, right? Let's say we've been doing this 0.6 pounds a week thing, and we've been doing it consistently for 3 months, right? So that's a total of, we average out 4 weeks a month. So that's going to be a total of 12 weeks. So 0.6 pounds times 12 weeks. That means that they've lost 7.2 pounds. We'll round that to 7 pounds just to keep it easy over here. So now they don't weigh 200 pounds anymore. Now they weigh 193 pounds. And we're going to watch this number right here. Well, we're going to watch all of these numbers here. We're going to watch this number go down. So 2,781, right? Remember, we had them on a 2,481 calorie diet, right? So now we're going to hit calculate. And now suddenly, they're only burning 2,735 calories per day. So that's a lot less, right? That's a substantial amount less. It doesn't seem like that much, right? So it was 2,781. now it is 2,735. So now we got to take like a look at our calorie deficit, right? So 2,735 minus what we put them on our diet for, which was 2,481. Now they're only creating a 254 calorie deficit every day. 254 calorie deficit every day times 7 days a week, right? That's 1,700 divided by 3,500. Now they're only losing 0.508 pounds per week. So they're losing 1/10 of a pound less. So suddenly their weight starts to plateau a little bit, right? And this wasn't a very aggressive approach, but let's take a look at a client. Let's look at a very similar situation, but let's just make this person a little bit heavier. Let's make this person like 250 pounds, right? Now, they need to eat 3,113 calories per day, right? And we'll do that 10% body weight rule, right? We want to lose 10% over like a 6-month period, right? So 10% over 6 months, that would be 250 times 0.9. So we want to get them down to 225 pounds. So 250, that's 25 pounds over 6 months. How long is 6 months in terms of weeks? That'd be 24 weeks. Actually, I'll just do half a year perfectly, which is a little, we'll say that's 26 weeks, right? So 25 pounds divided by 26. That means that they need to lose 0.96 per pound times 3,500. So they need to create a 3,365 calorie deficit per week divided by 7. They need 480 calories off this every week. Okay, 480. All right, so 480 calories is how much they're going to eat less, right? So they're going to exercise 4 to 5 days per week again, right? That's 3,113 minus 450. 3,113 minus 450. And there we go. They are going to consume 2,600 calories a day for the next 6 months. And we're going to look to see like how much weight they lose, right? So again, that's going to be, let's pull up a second calculator here. So that's going to be a deficit of 450 every single time, right? 450 times, and this is going to be, this is going to be every single day for 6 months, right? So times 7 times 26 here, right? That's a total of 81,000 calories that they missed out on, right? Because they've been exercising and dieting. So that's going to be that 23.4 pounds. This is the expected amount of weight this client should lose in 6 months. It follows the 10% rule that we talked about the other day. But at the 3-month marker, right? Let's take a look at this number again, right? 450 times 7 times 12 divided by 3,500. That means that at the 3-month marker, they'll be about 10.8 pounds into their weight loss journey. So now 10 pounds, we take this down from 250 down to 240 and we calculate it. And now suddenly they're burning 3,047 calories a day instead of 3,100 every day. They were burning 3,113. Now they're only burning 30,047. So 3,047 minus 2,663, that's a total deficit of 384. So for the remaining 384, for the remaining 6 months, times 7 times 24 divided by 3,500, they're only going to lose an additional 18. I did that wrong. I was like, that math doesn't check out. 3,113 minus 4. Oh, no. God dang it. 3047 minus 2,663. 384 times 7. That's that. And then 12 weeks times, I was like, I did 24 weeks. I doubled the weeks. So times 12. So that's going to be that much divided by 3,500. So that's going to be an additional 9 pounds. So they were supposed to lose 25 pounds, but they in fact only lost about 19 pounds overall, right? And that's great because that still puts them down to 231, right? But we see as their body starts to lose weight, their weight starts to plateau, right? Because the balance is shifting, right? They're coming into balance with like how many calories they're consuming. So they're no longer creating a deficit there. And that's one of the biggest reasons we see like a lot of weight loss plateaus, because people are not adjusting for and changing up their diet based on those compositional changes. And then there's the next reason, which is a really big one. which is going to be non-compliance. Now, this one is tough. This one's easy to understand, but it's tough to have a conversation about. So non-compliance is where maybe your client is under-reporting how many calories they are consuming. They're like, I'm eating 2,100 calories a day, but in reality, they're eating 2,400 calories a day, right? It's only a 300 calorie difference, but that's pretty substantial, right? Now they're not doing it necessarily because they're lying, right? That's what I gotta caution people. Sometimes people jump to the conclusion, it's like, my client's lazy, you're not getting results because you're lazy. It's like, no. They're just not an expert the way we are. I hear so many out of touch trainers say stuff like that. And it's like, you want results, you get them. And it's like, but it could be often from like meals away from home, like maybe it's that they're like, all right, I'm on this diet, but I work every single day. And while I'm out on the job, I got to get something to eat. And so they're really trying carefully to pick like the healthiest options available. Maybe they go to, like an El Pollo Loco or something like that, which is great because you can get like a side of broccoli and you can get brown rice and things like that, which are, both healthy and fibrous. You can get some lean chicken. And so then you look on the menu and it tells you how many calories you look at your meal and you're like, it was this number of calories, right? And you calculate it and you're like, great, I'm supposed to eat, 2,000 calories today. And that El Pollo Loco was 600 of that calories. And I had a 400 calorie snack earlier today. And I had a 500 calorie breakfast. That leaves me 500 calories for dinner, right? Tonight, once I get home from work. Cool. I'm going to go make myself a 500 calorie dinner. And it's like, they did it. They did everything they were supposed to do, right? Well, here's the thing. You think El Pollo Loco is calculating out their calories perfectly? There's probably added oils, different chefs, different things. Nothing's exactly perfect. So, you do that every day over the course of a week, extra 50 calories here, extra 100 calories there. It really starts to add up, right? So non-compliance is a really big one here. Sometimes it's just getting too many calories without realizing it, right? They're over report or under reporting how many they are actually consuming. Oftentimes not because they are lazy, but because like we just live in a world where tracking this stuff can be hard sometimes, maybe it's a misunderstanding of like what a portion size is. Kenny, I've got like a recipe for the way I make my coffee every day. I have like a very specific way that I do it just because I have like the flavor, the way I kind of like it. But we have this little coffee machine. I put it under there and I put 2 teaspoons of sugar in it because I do like sugar in my coffee. And I make, I hit a double shot of the espresso, which is like 5 ounces. And then I do 1 cup of milk, right? So that's every day. Creature of habit over here, right? And I buy the same milk every week, which comes in this little quart-sized thing. And so that is supposed to have exactly 7 cups of milk in it. And I've got a little measuring cup because, I need to make sure it actually fits in the coffee mug. And I pour it in there and I do 1 cup every time. And that's how I make sure that I'm getting the right, my flavor that I like. I worked hard on making this coffee that I enjoy, So what does that mean? If I do exactly 1 measuring cup every single day, and there are 7 cups in that bottle that I buy every single week, it should last me exactly 7 days, right? And they should all be identical, right?
Correct.
You know what happens every single week? When I get to day 7, I either over pour, because I'm assuming that there's exactly 1 cup left in there and I go to pour it into the thing just for the sake of it. It happens every week. It either overflows the cup or like it fills it up like 3/4 of the way every single time. And I measure it every day and I'm good at it. You think I'd be doing a perfect 1 cup measurement every time, but I don't, because human error, like nobody's perfect. That is a part of non-compliance. I think I'm getting exactly a cup every day. but I'm not, I'm goofing it up a little bit. Same thing is probably true of the sugar, right? Probably getting a little bit over or a little bit under a teaspoon every single time. Like this is part of non-compliance. And you think about like all of this has energy, and all that energy, once it gets into your body, it's not going anywhere, right? So non-compliance starts to look a lot less like laziness and a lot more like, yeah, we just live in a world that's hard to measure, but math, when we calculate out the numbers, it makes it seem like you should lose exactly this much weight every time, and there's never going to be any problems. It's going to be perfect. And that's just not true. So that's a big one. Or people will forget to put stuff in their food log. There is occasionally like just the classic example of human error, which is they forgot. That happens sometimes. They don't notice. They're like, they walk into the office and, there's, you go into like a cubicle office setting, everybody's got those little candy jars on their desk to like bring people over and socialize. You don't think it's like, oh, okay, well, one little, miniature Snickers bar or whatever, it's not going to hurt me. And it's like, well, you do one of those Snickers every single day. Like it starts to add up after a while, right? If it's not making it into your food log, we're unaware of it. And it's the thing that's going to explain why this isn't working. So that's a really big one. On the absolute flip side of that, aside from underreporting how much is coming in, a lot of times we sometimes over-report how much is going out, right? So our perception of exercise difficulty can sometimes mess up, how many calories we think we're burning. There are plenty of times where, like this happened to me on Monday. I thought I crushed it on Monday, and I was looking at my heart rate monitor, and I was like, man, I'm low on my calorie burn. And I thought I killed it. I set a PR on Monday. So I thought I was burning calories like nuts, and nope, definitely not. So a lot of times we'll over-report energy expenditure, right? It's like, no, I was really active today, and then turns out maybe not so much, right? So our perception of how hard something is often pretty misguided, right? We often think things are a lot harder than maybe they actually are. It's like, I took so many stairs today, and it's like, oh, well, you also maybe sat around for an extra 20 minutes that you didn't really think about or realize. So there are things that we can do to help this, right? There's ways, that can help your client sort of minimize these errors. We really like things like heart rate monitors, accelerometers, pedometers, little Fitbits and watches and things like that kind of help you track and keep an eye on things. That can help sometimes. I'm not saying you have to get 10,000 steps in a day, even though that's what you'll hear. You'll hear that in articles and on the internet and all kinds of stuff, like you gotta get your 10,000 steps in. I'm not saying you have to do that, but if you do that consistently and that is like a constant in your life, like every day you hit 10,000, it's 8 p.m. and you're 1,000 steps away and you're like, crap, and you do a couple laps around your house before going to bed. That is minimizing the error, right? It's minimizing the ability to have a little bit of that human error, in the same way that like, measuring something consistently helps, right? Rather than trying to eyeball making a cup of coffee every time and be like, I'll bet that's I bet that's a cup, right? Kenny, how old are you?
Yes, I am 22.
22. I got a weird example. Do you ever go out? Do you ever go like to a bar or anything?
Bar. No, I'm not really a drunkie. Although I do have a twin.
Really?
I have a twin, and he's a drunk.
Oh God. A drunk.
He has a collection of alcohol, so you could imagine.
Fair. Well, what I was gonna say is, like if you go to a bartender, you see they'll pour it. They pour it by like the length of time. They know like a 1 second pour is, I think a shot, if I'm not mistaken. And 2 second pour is 2 shots or whatever. There's like a whole system that bartenders have that I don't understand. But like that's the difference. When you go, sometimes you might order the same drink at the same bar, 2 different bartenders, and then one of them is like, whoo, this is way stronger than the other one, right? I ordered the same thing, right? Human error. We are not good at measuring stuff. We think we're very good at measuring stuff. Like we've got this like part of our brain that thinks that we're great at. You know, when you're driving and you're like, that's the faster lane for sure. And then you transfer lanes and all of a sudden you're like, that's the faster lane. And then you transfer lanes again. Right? like we think we are great at analyzing stuff, but we're just not. And so it really explains a lot of times like why it's very, very, very easy for us to hit these plateaus through, human error. It's a very, very common thing. So there's, we've got some tools at our disposal that can help us minimize mistakes. Reducing portion sizes is big. Eating smaller portions more frequently is actually been shown to be a little bit more accurate just because it's easier for us to measure something when it's nice and small. Taking short little walks is a great way to, ensure that if you take 3 short little walks every single day, that that's like a constant in your life, that those calories are getting burned there, right? Or even just moving during commercial breaks. That's a great way to kind of, get you up and moving a little bit, which can, again, help when it comes down to, keeping that caloric expenditure high. So that's some of the stuff that we're looking at. Now, another thing that we need to do, we already talked about this one, so we'll move through this quick, is like as we lose weight, body fat, body mass, whatever, our daily caloric needs are going to expand. So our job as like the trainer is to help our client reassess their caloric needs, right? If your client is losing losing mass, that's the goal here. But remember, we also need to take into account that body fat percentage, right? And if their body weight goes down, but their body fat percentage doesn't, that means they're losing lean body mass. And again, lean body mass could be water weight. But if it is muscle mass, we know that losing muscle mass reduces your body, your caloric burning substantially, right? We know that lean body mass burns a ton of energy. So if we see that in our client, they lose too much lean body mass too quickly, one of the things that you can do is you can zigzag your calories, right? You can have like a high calorie day and a low calorie day, and you do your high calorie day on days where you are training really hard, and you do your low calorie days on days where you're, training a little bit more gently. So then one other thing that you can do to kind of maybe break a plateau, and this one seems a little bit surprising, but you can also take 1 week off from training. You can do what's called a deload week, right? And deloads are really great. They're if your body becomes really accustomed to a very specific routine that you're putting your client on, you can use a deload. It's a really effective tool to keep yourself from plateauing. Now, me personally, and when I say like take a week off from training, I personally don't do this very often. I'm not a big fan of like taking a full week off from training. Really, you should only do this if your client has not already had like a lapse of training within like the last 3-month period. But if you've been really hitting it like really, really crazy, sometimes taking like a small little deload can be effective. I'm actually looking a little bit more into this year. This is actually kind of what I've been goofing around with. One of the reasons why I'm lifting so heavy at the beginning of the year this year is because I am kind of goofing around with this idea of like a deload every month. So I basically hit 3 really hard weeks and then 1 very pretty gentle week. I'm still lifting and I'm still working out, but it's not at like my normal high intensity. And so like I've been kind of goofing around with that because there's this idea, there's a little bit more research coming out about this concept called super compensation, which is basically where like you work really, really hard and then your body sort of like, has a chance to finally adapt after you kind of, give it a little bit of rest. And so then you experience like a lot of muscle growth in that off week. But again, this a little bit described a little bit differently here. We're talking about taking a full-on break from training for like a 1 week period. And this can be really effective because it can signal to your body like, hey, this high amount of stress that we've been under lately isn't dangerous. This is a low, we're back into a low stress. You can gain some muscle mass, right? You can lose some of that body fat. Remember, your body doesn't want to do that. Your body wants to keep the fat because that will help keep you around forever. It wants to lose muscle mass because it burns too much energy, right? But if you do just a little bit of deloading there, it can sometimes be an effective way to kind of signal to the body like, hey, it's okay, we're safe, we're not on a deserted island, and then other things that you can do, and this is one of the reasons why I haven't really done too much like specific deloading, but I like to implement significant changes into your routine. This is a really big one here. So this can be done by changing up the repetition scheme, trying different forms of exercise, little things like that. These are great ways to implement significant change. We talk about like the OPT model, right? Let's see if that actually works. That is not going to work. Some yearly. I think it's annual plan is what I'm looking for. We look at like the idea of like moving through like one month to another. If you start in stabilization, move yourself into strength, into hypertrophy, back into strength endurance, hypertrophy, maybe into max strength, right? Something like this is going to be, substantially different for your client. This is going to be, a great way to see some body composition changes, but you're changing it up so frequently in terms of like how you're training. Your body really never has a chance to plateau. It never really gets too used to one thing or the other. Or even if it's just something like this. I mean, this is like the classic weight loss paradigm right here. Just zigzagging back and forth between 1 and 2. This isn't a lot of change, but you could do lifting, 3 days a week here and 3 days a week here, and then you change it to 4 days a week here. There are ways you can change up your volume, and you could be picking similar exercises this whole time. Then all of a sudden you change them up, so if you've been doing the bench press for a while, change it to a chest press. If you've been doing pull-ups for a while, do chin-ups. Little tiny changes like that can have some substantial differences. You've been running, go for a swim, there is moving more. That's a way to break a plateau. If you have balanced out, well, then like, let's amp up the activity a little bit, if you've been doing, if your weight loss is plateauing because maybe you're getting really close to your goal, here's the real problem, Kenny. This is a classic problem we run into, especially in our bodybuilders and stuff. You can only go so low on the calories, right? We can't really, get much lower in terms of like what we're consuming, but we still need to burn more calories, and we're already working really hard. So we got to find another way to kind of burn some extra calories throughout the day. We'll go for a walk, try to move just a little bit more, increase that caloric expenditure a little bit. And by doing that, you might have some really positive effects. Increasing your water intake is really helpful. Now, this one is actually, in my opinion, piggybacking on our idea of over/under reporting. But increasing your water intake is sometimes helpful. A lot of times your clients will mistake thirst for hunger. A lot of times they'll be like, God, I'm hungry. And it's like, you're probably thirsty. Because your body, your brain knows that there's a lot of water in food. So if it's dehydrated, it will, signal hunger pangs to get you to drink some water. So if your client is consuming calories in such a way, and they hit like a big plateau, and all of a sudden they start falling off the wagon more often, they fall off the wagon, eat a little bit extra, fall off the wagon, eat a little bit extra, it could be because they're just consistently not getting enough water. So by increasing their water intake, they'll consume less calories. By consuming less calories, they get back to, out of that plateau. But again, I think this comes down to the human error side of things. There's nothing magic about like the water side of it. Now, this one's the one that's sometimes a little bit hard to talk about, but sometimes one of the things we need to do is reassess our long-term and our short-term goals. So by taking a moment to help our client refocus and remember what their goals are, maybe redo their goals and make an adjustment, that can sometimes remotivate them, which if they have been, again, human error, falling off the wagon just a little bit here and there, right? If that has been happening, reassessing their goals can be a really great way to remotivate them, get them back on board, or maybe make a new goal and shake things up a little bit and get them reinvigorated, right? I'm sure you've experienced this. I experience this all the time, I've got all kinds of different types of goals in my life, and I'll be really fired up about them, and I'll do it for a little while, and then I start to kind of slack off and I don't get quite as excited about it. And, then it's like, oh God, I need to reinvigorate, and so I'll set like a new goal or something or revisit it. And then that'll kind of get me really fired up again and I'll get back on track. Um, Increase your social support. There's another one that can help minimize that human error side of things, right? Get their friends, their family, their loved ones involved. Encourage your clients to make their friends and family aware of their long-term and short-term goals. Encourage your client to say like, hey, like I'm working on this, right? And if they can do that, then they're going to get more support and more encouragement, and they're more likely to stay, on the wagon. And then there's self-monitoring. Self-monitoring is a really effective tool as well. Help your client, encourage your client to, journal. Do not let your client rely entirely on your ability to motivate them. Like so often our clients are like, well, that's what I got you for. You're the trainer, right? You're here to make me work out, right? And it's like, yeah, but I'm here to like guide you. This is your journey, you need to stay motivated. You need to put the effort in. So encourage like self-monitoring, right? Develop that awareness. God, awareness is good for us, unawareness is what leads to so many different types of problems. So encouraging that self-monitoring can have a really, positive impact there. Now, when it comes to weight loss plateaus, what will often happen, and this is sort of, we're getting into the dark side of a weight loss journey here. A lot of times people will seek some type of assistance through, dietary supplements or, things like that. And so they'll look for, these things that can help them increase their caloric expenditure, right? Maybe a prescription weight loss drug, like Ally or Hydroxycut, which is not prescription, but stuff like that, right? These drugs that can have really bad long-term side effects. People will seek these out. And I'm going to tell you a horror story here that is absolutely terrible, but this is one of the reasons why we do not want to take some of these weight loss drugs that are out there. So have you ever heard of Ally? I'm going to do this on incognito because I super do not want this in my history. Weight loss, I think it's Al, and I think it's with an I. Yeah, it's with an I. So Ally is a very common weight loss drug. It was very popular for a long time. I guess it's still popular. And what it is it is a pill that what they say what it'll do is it pulls like body fat out of you. It basically makes you get rid of most of the body fat by like shedding it through like your digestive tract, right? So basically you will poop out your fats. It doesn't bind in your body quite as well. And that's the idea here, right? And like I said, this is a prescription drug. This is that we want to get, at least in a lot of cases. And when I was working at Biggest Loser, all of this stuff was off limits. We did not let our clients take Hydroxycut or Ally, any of these kind of things. But inevitably what would happen is people would maybe sneak it into their bags and, get it into their room. And once it's in there, we're not going to, we're not doing room checks or anything. And so this person was taking this, and then one day they just didn't show up for the morning hike. And whenever that happens, we call them and be like, hey, you overslept, because this happened at like 6 a.m. So people overslept all the time. So we would call and be like, hey, like, you okay? Do you need assistance? No answer. And when that happens, we send someone to their room to check on them just to make sure nobody is, injured or anything. And so knock on the door, no answer. I'm like, uh-oh. And so we're having a really hard time getting a hold of this person. Everybody goes out on the hikes, and the whole staff, which, this is a very quiet time for the staff once everybody's out on the hikes. We look into it and we're like, man, where the heck are they? And so we reach out and knock on the door, can't get in there. And finally we did the last straw, which is what we try not to do. And that's letting ourselves into this person's room. And now I didn't do this. This was the general manager does this. because we don't want, we don't want just anybody barging into somebody's room. The central responsibility kind of needs to remain with one person. So it goes right to the top at this point, because we want people to have their privacy. So my boss goes and gets the master key, and he goes and lets themselves into this person's room, and they were gone. They were missing from the room. What had happened was they had got into their car and they drove themselves to an urgent care, because once my boss got into that room, he found everywhere in the bed, on the floor, on the walls, fecal matter from this person who was taking this ally, and they were taking more than they were supposed to. And it caused them the most violent and intense diarrhea that you could possibly imagine. And it looked like they had painted the walls all over the place. So I tell you that story so that maybe someday you are welcome to recreate it and tell it to your clients, and hopefully encourage them from not taking this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I hear that even does like things to your skin. Like you could get like pimples and stuff, like or
There is,
rashes or something.
yeah, there are other side effects like rashes and things like that as well. Absolutely. Very, very, very true. So sometimes you will have clients who will take prescription drugs or non-prescription drugs, over the counter stuff they find on the internet, which is, okay, go, good Lord, um, in order to sort of maximize their results, right? And so we want to encourage our clients not to do things like that. Don't get me wrong. The science behind something like hydroxycut, when you look at, like, again, incognito here, hydroxycut, when you look at like what this is, right? Hydroxycut is a thermogenic fat burner, okay? And what that basically means is it is massive amounts of stimulants. It is a whole bunch of things like caffeine, uh, and other stimulants that basically like keep you super active. So remember how we talked about NEAT, right? That's all the activity that you burn through like fidgeting and things like that. If you are pumped like crazy full of stimulants, you're gonna be a little bouncy. And so you're just going to burn a lot of extra calories throughout the day. Also, we have found that like high levels of caffeine can also just boost metabolism generally. Although, if you ask a lot of people, and we don't have 100% proof of this, myself included, if you ask a lot of people, it's probably just a side effect of the bouncing. So summarizing everything up here, these are some of the ways. So some of the ways we want to break our plateaus. We like these methods here. Let's avoid the pharmacological approach, aka the supplement approach, right? Let's avoid that, and instead let's understand that, like, look, not every weight loss journey is going to be perfect. You're gonna goof up. We're going to calculate the numbers wrong. There's going to be a little bit of human error along the way, because, like, there's human error in everything that we do. It's the most human part of us, is that we make constant mistakes. And so, like, those little, being aware of those, and how to make those adjustments, that's going to be a really big part. Recalculate your numbers, learn how to get good at measuring, and make those adjustments when necessary. So aiding our clients through body composition plateaus, really important for long-term success, because plateaus are definitely going to happen. Although they can occur for various different reasons, it all comes down in the world of physiology. It all comes down to energy in versus energy out. But what is causing that energy balance instead of that energy imbalance, which is what we're aiming for? And so we need to educate our clients on nutrition and behavior change as well. It's not always about, hey, move more, or hey, eat this, right? Sometimes it's about, like, let's learn how to make some healthy habits, right? How do we encourage you to get up and move every day? How do we make it easy for you to wake up consistently? How do we make it easy for you to adhere to your goals and stuff, right? That's one of my favorite things. I love hacking with my client. I love like a little bit of life hacking, you know. Um, if you know that you have the bad habit of not doing X, Y, or Z, let's make it easy, you know. Let's find a way to encourage you and make sure that it happens. Um, Speaking of bad habits, hold on just one second. Did I? One of the things that I struggle with is remembering to clock in, and I cannot remember if I did today. Am I on the clock? I am. Okay. All right. Cool. So
Gotta
let's
make sure you get paid.
yeah, right. Well, that doesn't. We don't have a problem with that. We got to make sure I don't have to send an awkward email to my boss again. Like, hey.
What would happen if like nobody showed up? Like you would still get paid?
No, I don't clock in when nobody's here. No.
Oh, okay.
I wish that'd be awesome.
You just record it and then like, you know,
right
just
now,
post it up.
I do all the normal stuff. Like honestly, the thing that takes me most time is getting these darn recordings up. It's I don't have like I have a regular average Joe computer. Like it's not exactly an amazing machine of video editing. So downloading these videos and rendering them and then getting them uploaded to YouTube. If I had an amazing Hollywood video editing computer, I'd probably do it like that, but my version takes a couple hours. That's why the video goes up around 2:00 every day or so. It's also why we do the recording in the morning instead. It actually makes more sense, in my opinion, to do the recording at night, because then I could upload it at night and it'd be like, the whole day, and then people could catch up on it the next day. But I don't do it that way because that'd have to be up till midnight every day. And that would be awful. Anyway, we don't have to. All right, let's look at some myths, right? This is a fun one. We are going to do some myth busting. So after completing this section, we want to understand how some common weight management myths are developed and why they're out there. We don't want to let's get familiar with why they are fallacies, why they're not true, and educate our clients on how to kind of break those plateaus, right? Or plateaus, break those myths. So in the world of nutrition, whoo boy, and exercise, there is so much disagreement and there is so much controversy. People, we see it in the media all the time, like they lost this much weight in this much time. We see like differences in terms of things that are like market driven. It's like our product works, and it's like it works to make you money. So we're going to kind of review some of these common controversies here, right? So one of the things we typically see that's very, very popular is talking about the idea of like high protein, low carbohydrate diets. This is so popular right now. Keto is absolutely blowing up in the last few years. I gotta say, it has to be the most popular fad diet I've seen in my career. Now, I'm not saying it's necessarily bad or even unhealthy, right? I'm not necessarily saying that, but to say that, but what I do think is to say that it is superior to a traditional diet is a fairly irresponsible thing to say, fairly irresponsible like sentence. Just because they're really, I mean, what's important is getting like a good nutrient composition and the right amount of energy in, right? If you can do that on keto, fine, but it's kind of irresponsible to say that you can't do that on anything but keto, that is where I start to like have a little bit of a problem. I actually really don't dislike, I like to try to be as reasonable as possible when it comes to like certain fad diets that are out there. The zone diet. I mean, let's look at the zone diet here, right? This was a very popular one for a long time. And it's still around. You'll see sometimes like stuff will be zone approved on like nutrition labels, and like they don't do a terrible job. It's not a horrible diet here. You look at it It's basically where you set your macros up to be 40% carbohydrates, 30% fat, and 30% protein, which is just barely outside of like what the USDA recommends in terms of carbohydrates. This is just 5% lower than the minimum that the USDA recommends. And then you can see here, they do a really good job of being like, look, it's kind of like the food pyramids. Like most of your stuff should be fruits and vegetables, and get some low-fat proteins, get some healthy oils, and then keep the grains and starches to a relatively low minimum, just because they tend to be calorically dense. So their food pyramid doesn't look too off from like a healthy normal diet. And look at how well it fits into the My Plate, right? You're getting here they're splitting into carbs, fats, and protein, right? And they're saying like 2/3 of your plate here. Most of that should be veggies, with a little bit of it being like starchy carbs. And then again, protein, which is a little bit higher, and then like some healthy fats here. That's not awful. I don't dislike the zone diet. I don't think it's necessarily all that bad, but where we start to really run into problems with things like the zone diet is that people get a little dogmatic about it. They get really obsessed with it and say like, this is the only thing that works, and they're like, you got to do this. It's the only way. And it's like, that's an unreasonable approach to any diet. I think I am a great trainer, but if you ever hear me say you have to train with me and you won't get results with anybody else, that is crazy irresponsible of me to say, right? She will never hear me say it, right? Like, so it's kind of an interesting approach that we see there, right? That's a very common one. That zone diet is technically low carb. I'd say it's medium carb. You definitely have like Atkins, which is much lower carb, and then you have like the ketogenic diet. And the ketogenic diet, if you look at this, it's a very different setup, right? Let's see here if I can find. So theirs looks something more like this. Their pie chart's very different looking. It is, a little bit of protein, tons of fat, and very, very, very little carbohydrates. Now, is that okay? Sure. The idea here is that like by giving yourself lots of fat in your diet, you become like fat adapted, and then your body will burn fat more efficiently for energy. Also, you'll find that you're very satiated because you're getting plenty of fat in your diet, so it makes you feel very full for long periods of time, which can be great. Like that is actually an effective tool. That sentence, the mentality behind that, we know that, yeah, like one of the best ways to stick to a diet is to make sure that you are, successful. One of the best ways to stay successful on a diet is to make sure that you are not getting too full, right? So we see again 75% fat, 20% protein, 5% carbs. But like there's so many benefits to certain carbohydrates. There's lots of fiber in them, and I think getting fiber in a ketogenic diet is really difficult sometimes. There's a lot of like vitamins and minerals and things like that. There's the Power Protein plan to go lower, the South Beach diet. South Beach is another one that I'm not like super against, but like, you'll see stuff like this. This is another one that's like, relatively low carb here, high fat. And it's where you're just basically focusing on getting a lot of greens in and lean proteins. And I love that. I think that's great. I mean, like, I'm on board with this plate, with the small fact that it's relatively low calories, depending on how much oil is in there. I can't really tell. But like they're big on it, and South Beach diet is gets a lot of fish in the diet, and fish is really, really healthy for us. So, a lot of times these low carb diets, high protein, low carbohydrate diets often result in a state of ketosis. Okay. And ketosis is basically a state in which your body's liver will convert fats into fatty acids through the process of like that beta oxidation, right? And then that will be turned into acetyl-CoA, which will then go through the Krebs cycle, right? To produce ATP. So your body will basically run on these ketone bodies rather than running on glucose, right? But here's the thing. There is no real long-term scientific literature that proves that keto diets are actually more effective for weight loss. Yes, there's some short-term stuff. There's small studies where people have done these ketogenic diets. There's lots of anecdotal evidence available right now, because everybody's doing it. It's such a popular diet. We're constantly inundated with hearing about it, right? Kenny, I'm sure, are you on Instagram?
Not at the moment.
Hmm. So, I'm on Instagram, and I've got my students on there sometimes, um, and I go to their pages, and they're posting stuff about working out, and I look up stuff about working out because this is my interests, and the algorithm on Instagram knows that, like algorithm's like, this guy looks up a lot of dumbbell stuff, so I get constantly inundated with pictures and videos about dumbbells and plates and CrossFit this and CrossFit that, or corrective exercise this, how to fix your squat form, what's going on with if you got this posture problem. And I'm super inundated with information about, like, look at my keto success, and that's fine. But like, because we see that information all the time, it's like, well, look at how it works for so many people, right? And it's like, well, you're hearing a lot of the successes. We're seeing the successes show up in social media, on the news, things like that. But in terms of like the scientific literature, looking at like, how many failures there are, and so there's really not a consensus that it's actually better. There is consensus that it can work, but like anything can work as long as you follow those rules of weight loss that we've been talking about throughout this whole course. So, what explains why so many people are into it? Well, a lot of times there's some interesting reasons for, why the keto diet does work. I got to come back to this one because I kind of got ahead of myself. Part of it is the severe carbohydrate restriction, which results in you depleting your glycogen. Now, glycogen, you've only got, maybe a pound of it on your body, but it is this wet, soupy mixture. There's a lot of water in that glycogen. That's very heavy. So you will lose water weight like that. So someone might go on a ketogenic diet and drop like 10 pounds in a week, and it's because maybe they were really, full of like a lot of body water. The ketogenic nature does suppress your appetite. Like I said, that's a bonus, right? This is a good one. You might end up being on the keto diet and you're like, oh, I got to eat another snack. Nope, I'm full. Can't, nope. And so then you end up skipping your evening snack, which results in caloric reduction, right? And when it comes to like satiation, right? Again, like your appetite is coming, high protein leads to us feeling fuller more than any other macronutrient. Protein followed by fat, followed by carbohydrates. Carbohydrates don't have a huge impact on our ability to feel satisfied. Protein leaves us satisfied very, very easily. So, that high protein diet could lead to greater satiation. Greater satiation leads to less overeating. And then here's the biggest one. One of the reasons we do see a huge amount of success on diets, not only ketogenic diets, but really just diets in general, is whenever you limit your food choices, you're taking away your ability to like get a bunch of calories. And so it might be difficult for you to get too many calories in. In this case, they are eliminating an entire food group of carbohydrates, right? So by eliminating that, you don't have very many options left. So you end up like just not consuming as many calories. This is why I tell people, like, if I made up a diet and I called it the alphabet diet, I was like, it's a 26-day program. And on day one of the program, you can only eat foods that start with the letter A. So apples, apricots, asparagus, like only foods that begin. And then the next day you can only eat foods that begin with the letter B. So broccoli, Brussels sprouts, day 3, only foods that begin with the letter C, right? Cod. Like I'm gonna make it. It's a pretty freaking hard diet to stick to. So what ends up happening is you just end up eating nothing. And guess what? Eating nothing will result in weight loss. So that's one of the reasons why we sometimes see success here. Now, in addition to that, I do got to go back here. One of the drawbacks of the ketogenic diet that we should be aware of is also the fact that high protein diets often involve eating a lot of meats. And you know me, I'm not against like eating meat, but meat does have a lot of saturated fat in it, and that saturated fat could possibly lead to heart disease. We do know that it's associated with greater cholesterol intake and things like that. And for years, we've been very nervous about saturated fat intake. So that could be a big thing there. So, am I a fan of the keto diet? I'd say I'm neutral to it. I'm nothing it. I'm a fan of healthy diets. If you've got a healthy keto diet, cool. I'm on board. Now, what's another common weight loss myth that we often hear? Here, carbohydrates result in weight gain. This is just a continuation of the same conversation we just had. Carbohydrates are what cause weight gain due to insulin production, right? So a lot of times insulin gets a bad rap. Remember, insulin is there to trigger fat production, right? It's there to pull sugar out of your blood and convert it into glycogen or convert it into body fat, right? So a lot of times when we hear that, we're like, oh, insulin's making me fat, right? So it gets a bad rap. Its job is to pull sugar out and store it as fat, right? Just a really quick review here. Insulin, right? A hormone produced by your pancreas. Whenever there are high glucose concentration in your blood, that triggers the removal of that glucose into your muscle and your fat cells. There's also glucagon, also made by the pancreas. And its job is to respond to low blood sugar levels and go, wow, we don't have enough sugar in the blood to produce energy. And so it triggers the release of that glucose from glycogen stores in your body to get your sugar levels back to normal. So insulin stores it, glucagon releases it, right? So when we hear that, it's very easy to go, well, clearly insulin's the bad guy here, right? Because that's converting all that carbohydrate into body fat, right? And that's just not really a fair approach, because like both of these hormones are really, really important, right? To function to optimally, you need to have your blood sugar levels at normal levels. Now, here's the thing. If you do spike your blood sugar levels, yes, it is more likely that you are, going to trigger the release of insulin inside of your body. And insulin's going to do what it's designed to do. It's going to pull that sugar out of your blood. It's going to store it. But your activity level will determine what it gets stored as. If you're a pretty active person, you're burning through glycogen all the time. So it's going to get stored as glycogen. If you're a very sedentary person, your glycogen stores are full. So that insulin has nowhere to store those carbohydrates unless it converts it into body fat tissue. So, we look at like glucose levels, normal versus high. I want to find a chart here. There we go. So we look at something like this, right? You can see these big spikes here, right? And it's like, somebody just ate and then their body processed all the food and then they ate, right? Maybe their blood sugar got really low and so everybody's like, woo, we need to eat, right? And then boom, we spiked it up again, right? We can see like what type of effect certain foods have on our blood sugar levels, right? This dotted line here is simulating what would happen if, as their blood sugar levels dropped, what would happen if they ate something that was really high in sucrose, right? Remember, sucrose is, the table sugar, right? Like that's the sugar I put in my coffee. It's the sugar that we find in a lot of like really high sugar foods, right? It's glucose mixed with fructose. Fructose is, that's going to be found in like fruits and stuff, but this is found in carbohydrates once they've been broken down. This is just a super intensely sugar saturated sugar, right? So what would happen is if they ate something that was like a starchy carb, right, their blood sugar levels would go back to these normal levels. But here, look at this dotted line. This would spike way beyond normal levels. That's going to trigger a big insulin response, right? Your body's going to go, whoa, too much sugar in the blood. So it's going to make a bunch of insulin. And that's going to cause that insulin to drive all the sugar out of your blood. And now all of a sudden your blood sugar levels are low. So you're like, oh God, I'm getting hungry again. And it's only been a couple hours, right? So then we just keep doing it all day, right? So is it more about like managing your blood sugar levels, or is it important to learn how to manage your hunger levels? I don't think it's necessarily one is more important than the other. I think they're tied together. So this is where understanding our glycemic index is a really important thing, right? The glycemic index is that tool that measures how much certain foods affect your blood sugar levels. We just saw on that chart how much, sucrose is going to affect us like crazy, right? It's going to spike our blood sugar levels. But something like a whole starchy carb, like a potato or whole wheat bread or something like that, something that's much more complex, that's not going to spike our blood sugar levels. It's just going to raise them to normal levels. We'll produce a normal amount of insulin, which means that we're not going to pull all the sugar out of our blood afterwards. So food that's high on the GI index, that glycemic index, um, shouldn't say GI index. That would be, you know, glycemic index. Foods that are high on the glycemic index are going to raise your blood sugar levels much more rapidly than foods that are low on it. So it's not carbohydrates that are the enemy. It's honestly like sugars that are the enemy, right? We need to be just a little bit cautious about, how much sugar we are bringing in. Another myth that we are going to hear is that, the more you cut calories, the more weight you lose, right? Yeah, we do know that we need to create a caloric deficit, but that we don't only do that from cutting calories, and cutting calories are not the only way to create that deficit. So now we start to get into these what are called very low calorie diets, or VLCDs. Very low calorie diets are diets that are extremely low in calories, somewhere between below 1,200 calories or even lower than that, right? And there are so many problems with this. It's associated with malnutrition. You're not getting enough vitamins or minerals in because you're just not giving yourself enough food. Um, this is literally like going, oh, well, I do need vitamin C, but unfortunately, vitamin C is going to be found in that orange over there, and that orange has got 100 calories in it, and I'm trying to avoid calories, so I'm going to avoid the calories and therefore also avoid the vitamin C. What? Not good for us, right? One of the serious side effects of this, by the way, and this is what we see in a lot of crash dieters, this is what happened to my mom, is that it sometimes can result in gallstones. When you see because your body will actually start releasing materials into your bloodstream, and your gallbladder ends up getting a little bit of calcium in it, which then starts building up with other stones and sodiums and things like that, and eventually forms this rock. And then that keeps your gallbladder from being able to function. And then a doctor has to go in there and pull it out of your body and throw it away. So that's not awesome. So very low calorie diets, very dangerous because they are associated with malnutrition and things like that. Juice cleanses fall under this category. Negative calorie diets kind of fall into this category. Negative calorie diets are things where you're like, I'm going to eat all I want, but I'm going to only focus on foods that burn a lot of energy, right? Like celery, for instance, is mostly fiber and water, right? Mustard. What are some of these? What are these? Negative calorie foods. What's a list here? Celery, yeah, cucumber. See a lot of veggies here, which these things are great and they're packed full of nutrients and stuff. But the problem with the idea of negative calorie foods is they end up just being a super low calorie diet in disguise, and so this also limits how many healthy foods you're able to get in your diet. And again, this is associated with malnutrition. It can lead to gallstones, a lot of really negative stuff there. All right, well, we talked about low carb. What about low fat, right? That's popular. Low fat foods, low fat or fat free. People will often think okay, well, that means it's healthy, right? It's fat free. No, that's not how that works, right? The thing is, food companies have to find a way to make this stuff taste good, right? So if it's low fat, guess what? It's probably high in sugar. If it's low in sugar, guess what? It's probably high in fat. So low-fat foods are often really high in sugar or really high in proteins. They're finding a way to get them to taste good, right? And so when that happens, that doesn't mean it's necessarily a nutritionally sound food. So rather than focusing on low-fat foods, rather than looking at stuff like that, let's just try to focus on foods that are normal, healthy choices. And if it does happen to have some fat in it, that's great. Fat is really good for us. Yes, saturated fat has been associated with heart disease, but total fat is really important. This is something we need in our diet. It's how our body makes cells, it's how your body makes hormones. We need fat in our diet. So we want to encourage our clients to have that in there. What about just skipping meals? That's a great way to lose weight, right? This is a common myth we hear, right? Fasting, intermittent fasting, that's really popular. Often what we find is that skipping meals or fasting can, in the long term, often be counterproductive, right? Now, intermittent fasting is kind of interesting because it's its own, sort of thing, where people are still managing to get the right number of calories. They're just doing it during a certain eating window. If you're still getting the right number of calories, then okay, fine. Now, is it better? I don't know. You're getting the same number of calories you would on another diet. So I don't know. Like, you will hear people say things like it results in more growth hormone and things like that. Maybe. What I've seen, in my opinion, if you are going to intermittent fast, in most of the research that they've done, it is more effective for weight loss than it is for weight gain. If you're trying to gain weight on an intermittent fasting diet, it may be counterproductive. But if you're on a weight loss program, maybe intermittent fasting. But again, if it's something that's hard for you to stick to and it causes you to have like a bad psychological relationship with food, don't do it. It's not worth it. So skipping meals, aside from the intermittent fasting side of things, just skipping meals, right? Which is what a lot of people do. They'll just go, oh, okay, well, I'm trying to cut my calories. I'm going to skip lunch today, right? So what ends up happening is that leads to them being hungrier, and then they end up overeating during dinner, so they often skip a meal, and then they end up overeating later in the day. This is why, again, small, frequent meals is more helpful. Here's the one that we often hear: eating at night causes you to gain weight. Kenny, you probably heard that one a million times, right? Don't eat at night. That causes fat because you're not burning any calories at night. So any calories that you're eating is stored as fat. Doesn't really work that way. Your body is going to maintain balance. It does not matter what time of day it is. There's no magical specific time that you should be like that your body is either better or worse at like generating and storing body fat. However, the reason this myth exists is if you haven't eaten all day and then you go into the evening time like craving a ton of food, go back to the skipping meals thing, chances are you're going to overeat. Overeating causes weight gain, and then people are drawing this connection where they're like, well, I always overeat at night and I'm having trouble with my weight, so clearly eating at night causes weight gain. It's like, no, overeating causes weight gain, and not eating during the day that results in eating at night has caused you to draw this connection in your head. Being vegetarian is a great way to lose weight. I hear that sometimes. People will become vegetarian in order to lose weight. I want to remind you that Oreos are vegan. They are a vegan approved food. There are no animal products in Oreos in any capacity. So does that mean Oreos are healthy? No. Right. So although like, and I'm not against, vegetarianism, plant-based diets are a great way to get, really great micronutrients. They have been shown to have performance enhancing benefits because of how many vitamins and minerals are in them. That's great, but it doesn't matter if there's not a calorie deficit. Again, it kind of comes back down to our normal conversation. And then one thing that is kind of a bummer about veganism sometimes is plant-based diets do tend to be sometimes relatively low in fat. So if you're not being careful about getting, olive oils and healthy oils and things like that in your diet, that could, become a low-fat diet, and low-fat diets we know are not any more healthy for us than anything else. So we need fat in our diet, and sometimes getting those from animal sources is a good place. Fish is incredible. You can't lose weight if you eat healthy, if you eat red meat. Red meat is only unhealthy. There's no room in this world for red meat. That's not true. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to sneeze. Hold on. Woo! Don't get me wrong. Red meat is very high in saturated fat. This is true. It's often high in cholesterol. This is true. But it's got other things in it as well, like iron and zinc and a lot of other minerals. It's packed full of B vitamins. So there's room in the diet for red meat. Maybe don't have it every single day, but it can be incorporated into a weight loss program. But definitely choose the leaner cuts. Don't go for crazy, Don't go for crazy levels of really heavy fat, red meat. Here's a common one. More protein means more muscle. You got to get protein in your diet. That'll help you build more muscle. Eat 500 grams of protein a day. So you'll hear this, right? But remember, in order to experience muscle growth or fat loss, your body needs calories in order for this to happen. And then it does need adequate protein, but there's only so much protein. If I go to a construction site with a truck full of lumber and I'm like, hey guys, I brought you more lumber to make more house. And they're like, we've already got all the lumber we need. And it's like, I'm going to leave it here for you. You're going to use it, make the house even larger, right? And I dump it off. Right? They're not going to use it. They've already got the blueprints and they're already working as fast as they can. I'm not helping this situation, right? Same thing is true of protein. If you bring in like way more protein, your body's just going to go, thanks, I get, and it's going to convert it into carbohydrates and, burn it up for energy. So resistance training is really important here. Resistance training is the driving factor that causes protein synthesis. Damage your muscles and then ensure that you're getting enough protein to build that muscle. But there's a cap. It's about 1.7 grams per kilogram is what we often see as the cap. Sometimes it'll go as high as like 2.2 grams per kilogram. That's 1 gram per pound. That's about what we think is the real upper limit. So anywhere, between this number and this number is a pretty safe bet. There's really no consensus that proves that being, even higher in that nitrogen balance, more protein, there's no proof that it results in more muscle. Here's another one. You have to exercise at low intensity or you won't burn fat. We got the fat burning zone, right? We talked about this in our physiology class. The fat burning zone is just the part where you are burning a higher percentage of fat than you are burning a higher percentage of carbohydrates. But the number of calories is very low because the fat burning zone, shifts. Like as our intensity goes up, the more we rely on carbohydrates. And maybe that means that you're burning 70% carbs, 30% fat, but you're burning so many more calories that the number of calories from fat is actually higher. They've got a really great example of this in the chapter, actually. So I want to show you this, Kenny. If you look, I'm pretty sure it's here. This will actually show you. Where is it? Oh, no. I went too far, actually. All right, here we go. So let's take a look here. Low intensity exercise, they burn 100 calories and 60% of it was from fat, right? So then only 40% of it was from carbohydrates. So that means, that's a great distribution, 60% fat, 60% fat, 40% carbs, right? So that means 60 fat calories were burned at that low intensity. But then they went to high intensity and now it's only 40% fat and it was 60% carbohydrates. So it's like, well, I don't care about burning carbohydrates. So why would I want my carbohydrates to be a greater percentage? Well, I guess theoretically you don't, but look here, you burned 500 calories, 40% of them. 40% of 500 is more than 60% of 100, right? So you burn 60 fat calories in one version and 200 fat calories in the other version. That's better. Not to mention you tapped into all those glycogen stores. So after you leave the gym, that remaining 300 calories, which was all the carbs that you burned up, right? The 300 calories from carbohydrates, you go consume some food, that 300 calories is guaranteed to be converted into glycogen rather than being converted into fat tissue. So you not only burned more fat calories in the moment, you also ensure that your body is less likely to store more fat calories later on that day. Win-win, right? So there is no magic fat burning. Well, I mean, there is a fat burning zone, but it's not magic and it's definitely not the best way to burn fat. The best way to burn fat is to burn calories. Here's another one we hear. Females will get bulky, right? We hear this all the time. Like female clients are like, I'm afraid of getting too big, right? So due to women having low levels of testosterone, they do not experience hypertrophy as easy as men. Female bodybuilders that are like very, very muscular are some of the hardest working people in the freaking world because they are literally fighting their own genetics. And then often there's other conversations to be had about that as well, but I don't want to throw shade. So we'll see like testosterone levels is a huge driving factor here, right? So women tend to have more of a predominance for type 1 muscle fibers, which are just not very bulky in size. So we don't have to worry about that as much for our female clients. However, strength gains are actually pretty similar among both sexes. In terms of like strength coming from like the development of the nervous system and the development of other energy systems. So it's great. Like female clients, lift heavy, lift real freaking heavy. Get used to that. And don't worry about getting bulky. It is very, very difficult to do. You need a huge calorie surplus. And you need to like be very specific about your training. And a lot of times there's some other stuff that you need to do, which, you know, you're not going to do. Sugar makes you fat is another one. We hear this all the freaking time. Here's the thing. I am not a fan of sugar. It has a lot of negative effects. The idea that it makes you fat, though, is not very fair. There's a lot of naturally occurring sugars found in vegetables, definitely a lot found in fruits, and then there's some found in like milks and honey. There's definitely found in honey, but milks as well. So refined sugars have no benefits to them. Like processed refined sugar has no good points other than the fact that it tastes good. So nutritionally, it is a bankrupt food. But the sugars found in honeys and milks, fruits, things like that, those have some micronutrients associated with them. So, be cautious with your sugar intake. Avoid refined sugars. Yeah, those are not great for us. I am not going to go so far as to say they make you fat, but I will 100% go as far to say that they have no benefits. So if it's not helping you, why the heck do you even want it, right? So we want to avoid those nutritionally bankrupt refined foods, but being mortally afraid of like sugar is a very counterproductive way to live your life. So what our message really should be is, reduce that junk food intake, right? Avoid the sugar, avoid the cookies, candy, things like that, and then promote physical activity. But let's not take this approach of don't eat sugar. Sugar makes you fat. That's a scientifically unsound approach, that makes us sound less like experts and also leads to, it doesn't exactly help our clients in any way. So for optimum health, try to keep your sugar intake to 10% or less of your total calories. And then lastly, this is a myth, which, I think has had some positive benefits. But starvation mode prevents weight loss. You will hear people say like you'll go into starvation mode, and starvation mode means that you can't experience weight loss anymore. Some studies have shown that a reduction in metabolism due to calorie deficits has existed, but for the most part, scientists have found this to be fairly reversible. So starvation mode can affect you in the short run, but the message is that it doesn't have a lot of long-term effects. Now, that being said, dramatically reducing your calories can result in malnutrition, like I said, mood swings, low energy expenditure. So it can screw your short-term results. So there's no reason to, just because starvation mode preventing you from ever losing weight is somewhat of a myth, according to some scientists. It doesn't mean that it's like, oh, okay, cool. So then I can do starvation mode. It doesn't mean it's a good thing. It still should be something to be avoided. It just isn't having as negative of effect as some people will give it credit for. So it is somewhat of a myth. And that's that, man. A whole bunch of myth busting today, right? Our job is really to demystify some of these things, take away the idea that these things are magic and kind of give a reasonable explanation for things. And at the end of the day, Kenny, our big message to our clients should always be, focus on long-term results over short-term results. and educate our clients based on like sound scientific research rather than some of these loud myths that are out there. You know, that's really kind of what we're aiming for. All right, man. Any questions today? How you feeling? Uh-oh. Kenny, you still with me? Oh no. How
I'm
long?
right here. Yes,
Oh.
I'm listening.
All right, you got any questions, man?
So far so good. Based on the weight loss, maybe I just gotta practicing the math part. I think
Yeah,
I'm gonna
well,
take a look at some notes and maybe.
that stuff's always hard, you know. But the more you practice it, like practice it for yourself, you know, run your numbers a bunch. The more you practice it, the more natural it'll get. It is easier than you think. It's just that I always show you, you know, there's lots of calculators out there that'll do the work for you. I just always show you the manual versions because I want you to see the inner workings of how these calculators work. But you don't have to, you know, go to the internet, you know, punch in the calculator will do it for you.
Okay, cool.
You don't always have to do it manually. So, um, but you know, the art, what you really want to be good at is like, you know, learn how to communicate this information with your clients. That's the important stuff.
Couldn't I just give him like a paper and like, oh, come back tomorrow. I'll give you the list of what you gotta do. Or
Yeah.
no.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of times you'll sit down with them in one session and be like, so here's our goals. Give them a little bit of homework. I want you to track your food this week, right? And they're going to go away and you're going to go work out a plan. They're going to come back and be like, all right, show me what you ate. And then you're going to say, okay, well, here's what I want you to focus on this week. You know, a lot of times you'll have almost like homework assignments for your clients. But yeah, man. All right. I'll kill today's recording and I'll see you tomorrow.